Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Grimcoven, and today we're going over Awaken Realms Next for 2024. If you don't already know, Awaken Realms Next is a press event put out by Awaken Realms every single year starting with last year. It started last year, but they did it again this year. In fact, this just yesterday, and I assume they'll be doing it in years to come. But the basic idea is they go ahead and tell you their lineup of things coming for you in the coming years, so you can go ahead and follow and stay tuned and, to give feedback and all those various things. Follow the GameFound page, all of that stuff. It's basically a press event. It's a press event where they tell you all the things that are coming up ahead. And we're going to go over yesterday's press event. Now, if you want, you could just go ahead and follow the GameFound blog post over here, or you could watch the 43-minute video if you want to go ahead and just our 46-minute video if you want to get the full everything on it. But if you're just looking for a quick recap, what are the games coming? What are the things you should know about? Hopefully a 15-minute or less video as I go over all the things coming. Well, that's the point of this video. And of course, before we dive into it, disclaimer that I do work for GameFound, please take that into account. GameFound and Awaken Realms, while two separate companies, do have shared ownership, so just take into account any potential biases and all of that. But with that, Awaken Realms Next 2024. What's coming? What's the lineup? Many of you had, speculation or different things. I've seen some people who correctly called that Puerto Rico was in the lineup, so at least there's some degree of, foreknowledge coming, and the rest of them were pretty much original things, so harder to see what's coming in that sense. But let's go ahead and start off with it, although let's, I guess, talk about some few basic things that they talk about in the video that I won't be heavily diving into here. Which is, first of all, one fun thing that I saw they did in their Awaken Realms Next announcement is midway through the video, they're like, hey, by the way, here's a bunch of the open late pledges that you can go ahead and get your hands on, from Dragon Eclipse to Stalker to all of those things, which I think is a fascinating thing. I'm very curious to see what the bump would be on those campaigns, from, hey, we got this exciting lineup, people who are there for Awaken Realms projects, and you go ahead and say, hey, by the way, here are a few things that you might have missed out on. Maybe you're a new Awaken Realms fan. Maybe you were cash-strapped when those games were coming out. Maybe you weren't convinced, but now you find yourself a little bit more leaning towards it. I am just curious about the nature of even just mentioning through the event, by the way, these things are still available. I'm curious what kind of effect that has. They also did a bit of a shout out to Awaken Realms Digital. That's going to be one of the companies within Awaken Realms where they go ahead and they create digital board games. You can follow their page on Steam over here. You can follow the creator. You can see their individual games from Tainted Grail, Panorama, all these various things out there that they've been putting out. The one that caught my eye the most personally was Dragon Eclipse. Has a little deck building roguelike adventure game. That one thing I actually find fascinating is Awaken Realms Digital has a history of putting out games with the same name as their existing board games that don't play the same at all. In some cases they do, but in other cases they don't, and so I find that an interesting kind of confusion aspect. If you're here for, Tainted Grail, you might find yourself playing a Tainted Grail deck builder roguelike totally different experience. If you're here for Dragon Eclipse, you might find yourself playing this experience, which looks fun. I'm genuinely interested in it. There's a free demo going on first, you can go ahead and check that out. The actual game can't be bought. But yeah, just a small little side point they have at Awaken Realms Digital. They talked about those as well. But with that, let's go ahead and talk about the actual campaigns, the actual games that are going to be coming out into GameFound throughout this next year. Starting off with, and I'm going to go in order of their press event, which is Castle of Burgundy. The Castle of Burgundy is getting a reprint, which makes sense because there are a ton of people who want their hands on this. They want to get their hands on this game. This game does have some degree of retail availability, but not easily available. It has not been widely distributed. I think that for your typical person who does want to get their hands on this, getting your hands on absolutely everything, especially if you want the deluxeifications, all the extras, all the acrylic tiles, all of that you'll have an easier time getting your hands on it throughout this campaign. From what we've seen, from what we know of what they're putting out, it doesn't seem like they're putting out anything new to the campaign. They're just saying, hey, here's a reprint. We already did. I mean, the whole point of the Castle of Burgundy was it already was something new. It was not just a deluxeification of an already existing game, but it also added sorry. It also added a full Vineyards expansion, which I finally played for the first time last month, and I absolutely love the Vineyards expansion. I think it's amazing, I think it's incredible, very well done. It's designed by Stefan Feld, and I think it really adds to the experience while not taking away. It folds naturally into the Castle of Burgundy game in a way that you could play without it, and it's totally fine, or you could play with it, and it's amazing. They have the Shields module, which is delightful, by the way. The Shields are incredibly overpowered. I love Castle of Burgundy. I have played it an absolute ton this past year. I have played that physical deluxe of, the over-the-top Awaken Realms version a ton. I will say as general feedback, if you are someone who's interested in this campaign, there's a few ways you can get this game, from the acrylic tiles to the full miniatures version to the base game. Personally, I find that I highly recommend the acrylic tiles. It will cost you more, but they are a very nice deluxeification to be added to your game. I do find the miniatures are a bit more hit and miss. At this point, having had the game in my collection for quite some time now, having played it a lot, I probably play with the full miniatures blinged out version maybe 1 out of every 4 games, and the rest of the time I default to the acrylic tiles because they're less work, they're less table space, and they look beautiful on the table anyway. So if you're looking for some feedback as to how I personally use it, I do like the miniatures, I do find that I do use them, but I use them like 1 out of every 4 games. So there's that. That's basically the first thing. Castle of Burgundy, a reprint. This to me is not a surprise. I assumed this would be coming, and obviously I do have some degree of knowledge from working for GameFound, but well before I knew this was coming, this is an easy no-brainer for it to be something that was going to be reprinted, because there's been a ton of demand for this game since it arrived. It is incredibly blinged out. It is one of the best games. I think it's their number 17 on BGG, and I'm glad they're reprinting it. I'm glad they're continuing to make it accessible to those who want to get their hands on the game. That's going to be the Castle of Burgundy Special Edition reprint. Then we have coming up next, we have Puerto Rico Special Edition. Again, kind of makes sense. At this point, you should probably start going through the library of the Ravensburger titles. If you don't know, Ravensburger is an investor in GameFound as well. And so there's that degree of partnership, the degree of, companies that know each other and have some degree of alignment in terms of bringing something that is incredibly popular back to the table to those who want that same thing, but with deluxeification behind it. So at this point, start going through whatever Ravensburger has and see what else may or may not make its way to GameFound with Awaken Realms eventually at some point. But in this case, we have, again, Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico, which was I believe it was the longest lasting #1 title on BGG in terms of the #1 spot. It's a game that has been out for a very long time, put out in 2002. It's ironically, Castle of Burgundy has never held the #1 spot, but I think Castle of Burgundy is more popular, although it's hard to really measure it. Castle of Burgundy, between the two editions of the game, the original 2011 and the 2019, they have 90,000 people who own the game, whereas Puerto Rico has 80,000 people, and that's marked as owned on BGG, which is obviously just a sample size of the population and not everyone out there. But I do assume this will be popular. I don't know if it'll eclipse the original Castle of Burgundy. I think that game is more highly rated. It is more in the public eye. I think Puerto Rico will not do as well, but I think it likely will get close to how well the original Castle of Burgundy did. Speaking of myself, I've played Puerto Rico, but it's so long ago, and it's not a game that is one of my personal favorites. It's a game that is many people's personal favorites. People have a lot of fun with it. For me, I played it a long time ago when I first got into board gaming, and I'm pretty sure I played it only at a 2-player count, which is really not the way you should be playing through this game. And so for me, this is a game that I do want to dive back into. I'm sure I will with this, deluxe edition at some point, but I have no idea if it is or isn't a game for me. When Castle of Burgundy was announced, I did a full video. I think I did multiple videos talking about what I wanted from the campaign, what I wanted deluxeified, how I think they should or could improve upon the system. And with Puerto Rico, don't expect any of that from me, because I just don't know the game well enough to provide that kind of meaningful feedback. What I can say is, if it's anything like the Castle of Burgundy campaign, Awaken Realms will be going through the page, we'll be looking for your feedback. There's not a ton of information yet, we just have the general announcement, the new art style, the cover looks great, we got these ships, the 3D concepts, all that stuff. Again, they'll be looking for your feedback, they will not make everyone happy. It's the nature of these games, there's no way they can. You're going to have a lot of people who have conflicting opinions and conflicting feedback on what they want to see out of a deluxe version for Puerto Rico, and Awaken Realms is going to take that into account, make whatever decisions they have to, and or go with whatever the general opinion is, and balance all of that with also just what makes sense from a manufacturing standpoint, and ultimately produce something which may or may not be as popular as the Castle Burgundy Deluxe Edition was. I have no idea. That only time will tell. That's going to be Puerto Rico, the second announcement they have. Then they have Grimcoven. They have 2 basically new games, and they also have the Air Vault dice. We'll go through again in order. But we have Grimcoven coming from Awaken Realms. This is going to be a miniature boss battler with like rogue-like elements. I believe they said rogue-like elements with a dice placement puzzle going on. So it's going to be dice placement, rogue-like, boss battler experience, light on story, just jumping straight into, the actual experience. If you scroll through the comments on GameFound, you'll already see people who are like, well, no story, that's not an Awaken Realms game. And first of all, the Great Wall would beg to defer, but I would say that not every game needs to have a campaign and story, and it's about finding your right audience. It is absolutely true that a game like this will not be targeting the people who like ISS Vanguard, the people who like, Tainted Grail, or all of those deep dive, either fields, all those deep dive adventures that are out there. This is targeting a different audience, a subset of that same audience, but it's going to be targeting people who want something less completely involved and invested. And to that end, I think it's a good thing for Awaken Realms to branch out into those audiences. They're still going to have your narrative games. The other last game we'll be talking about will still be that deep narrative, world building, exploration, all of that stuff. But Grimcoven is focusing more on the one-shot concept, which again, I think is a good thing. You can't have 13 ISIS Vanguards in your collection. You just can't. There's only so much of these broad scope games you can have. But it's something that plays in one shot. There's a lot more room for something like that to last in your collection for a long time. The plot of Grimcoven Your hunters, you follow a there's not much of a plot. Your hunters, you follow a commitment or a pledge with each other, and you're held accountable by your blood or whatever. It's light on story. It is what it is. There's a full videos, by the way. There's videos, trailer videos for, well, I don't think Puerto Rico had one, nor Castle Burgundy, but Grimcoven and Lands of Evershade, the last one we'll be covering, definitely had full trailer videos you can watch. That won't really give you a ton of information, but they are fun to watch if you're interested in that. But Grimcoven, again, your hunter's mechanics are drastically different. A special electricity dice will help you power up your armor. Other times you'll forge magical bullets to be fighting at the moment. That concept seems like it could be fun. Again, we don't have a ton of information about this. All we really know is it's going to be about developing your combo, developing your characters, going on a boss battler, and dealing with it as a one-shot experience. So if that's something that sounds up your alley, well, this is a campaign to follow, because if you want that one-shot experience, Grimcoven is going to be delivering on that. Then, before we get to the big climax over here, we have AR Vault Heroes and Companions. This continues what Awaken Realms did last year with the AR Vault dice set. They put out a series of dice that were basically, giving you unique dice with promo cards for the existing games, dice that can be used in any setting and or in the games or with the cards in some way, shape, or form. You can actually just check out if you want to see some coverage of those dice. Meg over on the channel did covered a deluxe vacation video for the month, and she covered those dice if you want to see more of those. But past that, the AR Vault Heroes and Companions is taking it to the next level, giving you miniatures for, that might be D&D friendly or RPG friendly, but it continues that more accessory brand of Awaken Realms. I'm curious to see how this does. I don't think I'm the target audience for this, or the dice for that matter. This is just not what I'm like. I want a board game. I want something I can play. Dice and accessories, if they meld into the thing that I can play, it's one thing. But these feel more like they're targeting more of the RPG player, someone else who's looking for that kind of experience, which just isn't me as much. I am curious to see how it does. The dice did fairly well, considering the fact that there are a bunch of dice. Which means we've seen a lot of dice campaigns that have done tremendously well, so I guess it's not necessarily a surprise. I'm just not the target audience. But these are going to be a miniature line, which is again fascinating to see how that works, because Awaken Realms already puts out a ton of miniatures. The idea that they're putting out miniatures as a dedicated product, like just here's a miniature, as opposed to here's a game and a miniature and all that stuff around it, I'm very curious to see how this one will do. That's going to be AR Vault Heroes and Companions. And then lastly, we have Lands of Evershade. Lands of Evershade is going to be their big box exploration one, and you can see follower counts. Follower counts are always an interesting thing to go through. You can go through this campaign page, through the Game Found blog page to see what's out there. But we have Castle Burgundy, with it has 5,300 people following it, which makes sense to a large extent. A lot of people already got this, and they might be interested from curiosity standpoint, but many of them probably already got what they needed from Castle Burgundy, and they don't need to tune in. We have Puerto Rico jumping to, what do we have over here? We have Puerto Rico jumping to 7,000 followers, more people following, but still not Awaken Realms' core fan base. Then we have Grimcoven at 8,100 followers, pushing it up a bit, a new IP, something that's not a Euro game, more of a dungeon, boss battler, all that stuff. And then we have AR Vaults and Heroes with 3,000, less popular but still present. And we have Lands of Evershade, their most popular one, because it is Awaken Realms' core audience, with 9,200 people currently following, and that number is only going to grow. I'm very curious to see how these campaigns will do, because, well, let's talk about that at the end of it. But Lands of Evershade from Awaken Realms, coming in Q4 2024. This is going to be the big end-of-year climax, similar to the way Nemesis Retaliation was for them last year. But Lands of Evershade is going to be a hybrid RPG board game that, 1 to 5 players, that really brings into that Awaken Realms narrative, that backstory, that world building. You're going to have characters where their past affects their future, their choices, their actions. Honestly, you can watch both the trailer video and the page, as well as the entire pitch. Like they have 10 to 15 minutes of the Awaken Realms Next video is devoted to going into the concepts and the and the aspects of a Lands of Evershade. But all of us to say is there's not a ton of actual information as to how things play out in the game or the mechanics of the game. Right now we have a lot of kind of things dancing around what the game is, and so to that end, it's a highly thematic game with a world built fully around it, with backstories and world building and stories and living world, all these keywords and buzzwords that effectively tell you that this is going to be Awaken Realms Next, Awaken Realms Next large narrative game, similar to the worlds of Tainted Grail, similar to the worlds of ISS Vanguard. This is going to be continuing that type of experience, with the same people behind that type of experience as well, not just the company, but the people who worked in them as well behind it. So this is going to be the thing you want to pay attention to if you are a fan of Tainted Grail, either Fields, ISS Vanguard, or I guess narrative, campaign, world-building games in general. That's going to be Lands of Evershade, their big hit. As far as how this compares to last year's lineup saw, if I recall correctly, there was Castle Burgundy was last year, or was it earlier than that? Let me think. Last year we had Stalker the board game, We had Nemesis Retaliation. No, not Castle Burgundy. There was Dragon Eclipse. There was Stalker the board game. There was the Awaken Realms Next dice set, and then there was Nemesis Retaliation. There were 4 campaigns last year. This year looks like there's going to be 5. And to that end, I think this year is going to be fascinating to see. I'm curious to see whether Awaken Realms will raise more this year than they did last year. Because last year we had all those campaigns did fairly well, but obviously Nemesis Retaliation knocked it out of the park with 12 million funded, building off an existing line, an existing fan base, and it really did incredibly well. But then you have a bunch of things that I think Casa Burgundy is going to do very well for them. I think Puerto Rico is going to do very well. Both of those will be, beating Dragon Eclipse, I have to imagine. I'm curious to see where that line is. Then we have something like Grimcoven, which I think Grimcoven will be beating Stalker in terms of how well that appeal is. As much as board game IPs can work, as much as video game IPs turned to board games can work, I think there's also a little bit of a disconnect. And I think Stalker only did as well as it did because of the trust in Awaken Realms, and I think a general boss battler might do better for them, although time will tell on that one. Versus Lands of Evershade, I would be shocked if that crossed 12 million. I'd be shocked if a new IP from them has a degree of confidence in their following. It will do well, make no mistake, but maybe 5 million, 6 million, 7 million well. I'd be shocked if Lands of Evershade crosses 12 million, although we'll know a lot more as things, get marketed or pushed out, as you see content creators with copies and all that. But ultimately, I do think that Awaken Realms has another killer lineup of games. Again, the fact that they have Castle Burgundy reprinted, plus Puerto Rico as well, plus Grimcoven, plus Lands of Evershade, plus an Awaken Realms vault. To a certain extent, they're tapping into all audience. They're tapping into the Euro audience. They're tapping into, the single-shot miniature boss battle experiences, the giant narrative campaigns, and then they're branching out with Awaken Realms Next, with Awaken Realms, with the AR vault. They're branching out with the lines of accessories as well. That's basically Awaken Realms Next. That's what's coming from Awaken Realms in 2024. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.